So in 4-01 and 02, we focused on the while loop, and the difference is just where do you put the Boolean expression. So in Python, you can only put it at the top. In other programming languages, you can put it at the top and bottom. If you can put it only at the top, then it is a 0 to many kind of looping structure. If you can put it at the bottom, then it is a 1 to many because you're forced to go through at least once. Some people have already come across a situation where they're like, my program doesn't work, it just sits there. That's probably a sign that you're in an infinite loop and you've made a mistake in your Boolean expression. Okay? So we had our while loop that looks something like this. We have some kind of counter, and that variable is present in our Boolean expression, because if it's not, then you're probably stuck in an infinite loop. And normally we count up by 1. As all good computer scientists, we are like classically lazy. If there is an easier, better, cheaper, faster way of doing something, we'll even spend time on doing it. So a good rule of thumb is if you end up doing the same chunk of code 3 times or more, you've probably done something wrong. You should probably put it in a loop. Okay? And that goes for even kind of commands that you are doing. So a lot of what we do in grade 12 is sort of automating things that we end up doing over and over again. If you end up even in the terminal doing something over and over again, why are you doing it over and over again? Make a program and let the program do it for you. So this is kind of annoying. We have to have a counter, we have to increment it, but computer scientists decided that I don't really want to type this code over and over again. So you might have seen in Python that you can do something like this. There is a plus equal operator, and that was just a short form for counter is assigned counter plus 1. Okay, so plus equals just means take this variable, add 1 to it, and put it back into itself. So that's nice and handy. In other programming languages, you might see the plus plus operator. So it would be counter plus plus, and that means the same thing, just add 1 to it and shove it back into itself. You can also do minus equal, and that would obviously subtract 1 from the counter and put it back into itself. Okay? But computer scientists are so lazy that we don't even want to do that. Why should we hand manage a counter incrementing by whatever, usually 1? We could just let the computer do that for us. It's such a common thing that we're just going to let the computer do that for us. And that kind of structure is called a for loop. There's sort of 2 major variants. There's a Python version and then like an everything else version. Okay? So the whole goal of this is just to let the computer take care of incrementing our counter for us so that we don't have to do it. Okay? In Python, it's this in range thing. So you define a range. I want to go from like 0 to 10, and it just carries on and does the incrementing for you. You don't have to worry about it. In most other programming languages, it's this kind of structure. And if you look at it, all the processes that we want to do are sort of crammed into this one line of code. We initialize our counter, we do our Boolean expression checking, and then we do that increment counter, the plus plus thing, all together. Okay? You will also notice that there are semicolons here, because it's basically taking those 3 operations and just shoving them all in one line. But remember, the semicolon is the indicator that you've actually finished a statement. So we're just putting them together. Okay? So we're just going to take our exact example that we've been doing and looping over and over again, ask the user to enter a number, it will loop through that many times. Okay? So here we are on start. We get the input for, if you were doing a non-Python version, it would look like this. You set your counter, you do your Boolean expression, you increment it. If you were doing Python, you would literally just put counter in range and then state what the range is. Okay, so we're going to see what that would look like in a minute. Okay, so you would just say for counter in range, and that would go right in here. Remember, 4 goes on a line by itself, and then counter in range. You do whatever you would do, and then you go back. When you are done, you just hop out, okay? So once again, this is what your for loop would look like. For is now a reserved word. In Python, this is for every other language besides Python. In Python, you would just say counter in range. And in Python, it looks something like this. So I'm using loop counter. In is also a reserved word, and so is range. So here, instead of like hard coding 5 or 7, I'm just using whatever the person gave me. Okay, so I'm just going to step through this so you can see how it happens and what's happening in this in range thing. I'm just going to move over here. Why is that not working? I should be able to enter my number. Okay, for some reason this has died on me. It's not letting me step through for some reason. Oh, I had a breakpoint up there by mistake, that's why. There we go. Okay, so we're going to enter in 5. Now I'm going to step in. So you will notice I have this value now 5. I've converted it to an integer, and you will notice this in range. By default, if you don't specify, it goes from 0 to whatever number you entered. Okay? But you'll notice there's a little arrow here. If I go down, you'll notice these things right here. We're starting at 0, we're stepping by 1. So once again, you can choose to step differently. You could go by 2s or 5s or something, but I didn't tell it to. So it's going to step by 1, and it's going to stop at 5. So the whole process of incrementing my counter, Python has just taken over, okay? This variable right here, it's going to take the numbers 0, then 1, then 2, and so on, and it's going to shove them in this variable for us, okay? So I'm going to add a watch for this, and it's going to put those variables in there for me. So I'm going to step in, and you'll notice, look, this one magically became 0. It's going to print it out. Now it comes back, and after I execute this line of code, it magically became 1. Okay, so it's doing all the work for me of incrementing the counter. Now it's 2, now it's 3, now it's 4. Now, remember, all our examples right here that we've been doing, we always start counting at 0, right? So if I ask for 5 numbers, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so is this going to do the same thing? It says stop at 5. So when it gets to 5, it hops out. So when you say go to 5, it's doing 0, starting at 0, and it gives you 5 numbers. So once again, it stops at 4, 5 numbers in total. So that's how range works with a for loop in Python.